At Skeena Wild, we are working on a responsible development initiative. These are stories of local entrepreneurs, innovators, and local businesses who are building our regional economy in a responsible way and showing us the untapped potential in our Northwest economy. Hi, my name is Greg Knox, and I'm the Executive Director of Skeena Wild Conservation Trust. And over the years, people have been asking us what sorts of developments we support, what we think responsible development looks like. And so over the last little while, we've been putting a lot of energy into researching what we think responsible development looks like, looking at things like forestry and mining and energy development and articulating what we feel a good approach to those types of development are. We've also been looking at value-added opportunities, expanding tourism, other opportunities in our communities to really improve the sustainability of the regional economy. So over the coming weeks and months, we're going to be talking to you about what we feel responsible approaches are to these different industries. We're going to be sharing what we think are opportunities to strengthen the economy in Northwest BC. We're also going to be sharing with you stories of local entrepreneurs, businessmen, innovators who are really showing us the path forward. These are people who are already doing it. They're really showing us that what is possible in our region in terms of a sustainable path forward and taking advantage, creating opportunities. And we're really excited to share these stories with you. So the first thing we did in this project was look at and review projects that have been done asking people in the region what they think a responsible approach to development. And what they quickly told us is that they support development, that they want jobs for their kids, they want income for their families, but they want to make sure these projects are done in a way that protects their values. And things they valued highly include clean air, clean water. They really want to make sure their health's protected. They want to make sure that our fish and wildlife resources are protected because a lot of people like to hunt and fish in the region. And they also want to make sure that real benefits flow to our communities so that we can maximize the benefits from these sorts of developments. So we feel that Skeena Wild's approach to development aligns well with these sorts of values, aligns well with what the community has been telling us. And we think that our record really shows this. If we look at LNG, for example, there were 18 LNG proposals proposed for the North Coast. We worked through a lot of the environmental assessment processes to try to make those projects better, to improve air quality, to make sure water and fish and wildlife were protected, to maximize benefits to local communities. There was one project, however, we felt was just irresponsible, and that was the Pacific Northwest LNG proposal. That's because it was sited right over top of critical salmon habitat in the Skeena estuary and would have bring too great a risk to our salmon resources. We have some real concerns over the current approach to development. One of the key things is there's a general lack of planning around resource extraction industries. An example of this is when we called repeatedly for planning to be done when all these LNG proposals and pipelines were coming at us. We asked that a strategic environmental assessment be undertaken to look at things like defining where appropriate pipeline corridor would go, where proper LNG sites would be. But unfortunately, the provincial and federal government refused to do this sort of planning work. We're also really concerned about industry hiring and controlling professionals and scientists to do the impact assessments for their projects. We've seen a lot of issues with controlling information, manipulating the results, and we think this needs to be changed. We think it needs to be done arm's length from the industry proponents. Also, there's some really key issues with the current environmental assessments that are done for these projects. We're, as a community or as First Nations, are often invited to comment on these projects sometimes years after they've been proposed, and the big decisions around where they should be sited and the design of the projects have already been made. So we need to fix that problem. There's also a real lack of government capacity. Over the last 15 or 20 years, government has really cut its capacity, its staffing in terms of managing resource, doing the monitoring, collecting the baseline data, and doing enforcement. And so we think that needs to change as well. So the good news is we think there's a lot of solutions to these issues, and we're working on them as an organization right now. We're undertaking this research to define what responsible development looks like. So we're going to be talking about what good mining, forestry, energy development looks like. We're going to be talking about best practices in these industries. We're going to be showing examples of good projects in the region and talking about projects that aren't so good and how they can be improved. We're also undertaking land use planning, estuary planning initiatives. We're working with the current provincial government on their revitalization of the Environmental Assessment Act, calling for things like upfront consultation with communities and First Nations on siting and design of these projects, calling for independent science, moving away from this industry-controlled assessments, calling for more cumulative effects assessments, and general scientific peer review of the science that's being done and improved monitoring. So we're also supporting First Nations in their growth or their movement towards more control over the resources on their traditional territories. And we think the timing is really good for this because the government has downsized. They say they're going to hand over more control to First Nations, and so they just need to provide the capacity to First Nations to do things like manage the resources, do the monitoring on the ground, do the enforcement measures that need to be taken. So there's a lot of opportunities there. There needs also to be revenue sharing. We're calling for better sharing of revenue from these projects, and we're big supporters of the Resource Benefits Alliance. We're also pushing for local procurement. So that means that when industry comes to town, that they hire as many local people as possible and they purchase as many goods as possible, as many materials from local businesses. So those are the sorts of things we're working on. We're going to be coming back to you to talk about all those things. And in the meantime, if you have any questions, feel free to contact me. My email is gregk@skeenawild.org, and I look forward to talking to you all again soon in the future.